Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel, and on this episode of Sonar Fishing, we're going to talk about 4 baits, really 5, because I'm going to throw in a bonus there, and an honorable mention that really needs to be part of this list, but I just don't have one handy. But we're going to be talking about 5 baits that work extremely well with forward-facing sonar. So, Panoptix LiveScope, Active Target, whichever brand you have. Forward-facing sonar is really good at helping people catch suspended fish that otherwise, we wouldn't be catching. And so these baits are essentially baits that work very well up in the water column. They're not bottom bouncing baits. They're not top waters. They're right there in the middle of the water column that allow you to fish for individual fish visibly on your forward-facing sonar. So let's dive right in. The one bait that I'm gonna have to just add in here as an honorable mention, I don't have one handy, but that is an Alabama rig. The Alabama rig really does excel where a forward-facing sonar excels because it's so good at catching suspended fish. Just being able to lob that big thing out there, count it down to the right depth. You can watch it on forward-facing sonar and just reel it in above those fish's heads and catch suspended fish that otherwise would be very difficult to catch. I mean, that's what an Alabama rig excels at, and that's also what a forward-facing sonar excels at. So combining those two, you've got a very effective technique overall. So Alabama rig's definitely the first one, but these other ones are ones that I really want to dive into a little bit more. The first technique that really has started to become more and more popular, which was always kind of something that people did here in Tennessee, kind of under wraps, and other states too, but that's kind of like the Nedmiki rig, or what we call the Nedmiki rig, or even tight lining. Some people call it tight lining, but essentially all you've got here, we've got a little jerkbait here. This is the StreakZ 3.75 from Zman, and you pair it with a jig head like this. This is the Finesse jig head, and essentially what this does is this bait allows you to target fish that you visibly see on the forward-facing sonar, mostly vertically. So a lot of the times, if you're in deep enough water, you're going to be dropping this down vertically like you would a drop shot. A drop shot's another one that technically works very well with a forward-facing sonar. But this one right here, there's no additional weight. It's all one compact presentation. It's very natural. It looks like a small, shad there in the water, and you just hover it above those fish. Usually you're not adding too much action to it. You're not shaking the rod tip too much. You're just kind of leaving it there, maybe shake it a little bit and then lift it up. And a lot of times the fish will follow it on the lift. But that's one thing that forward-facing sonar has really enhanced your ability to catch more fish on the Nedmiki, because you can visually see how they're responding to this bait, and you can change your approach. You can let it sit still because putting too much action is kind of turning them off. You can lift that bait to get a reaction out of it. You can visually see on the forward-facing sonar how they're responding to it, and then change your retrieve or your presentation accordingly. But this bait right here has become very popular. My buddy Joey Nania, he goes and smashes them on this technique just about everywhere. But another lake that seems to really be exploding for this style technique is on Dale Hollow. Any place you've got deep, clear water, lots of shad, the Nedmiki is going to really excel. So that one right there. Usually I like the 3/16 ounce version of the Finesse Swimbait head, and I use light line. I usually use 6 pound test, gold label as my leader material on my spinning gear, and it's very similar to fishing a drop shot. And you can cast it out and reel it in and kind of pendulum it in, fish it similar that way. But a lot of times you're just letting it drop right below the boat for vertical fish. So your forward-facing sonar may be tilted into the vertical mode. So the Nedmiki is a really good one for fishing with forward-facing sonar. Another one that uses the same exact jig head. This right here is just a small swim bait. So small swim baits also really excel with forward-facing sonar. Lots of people are catching fish on lakes like OHIV and stuff like that using forward-facing sonar and small swim baits like this. And this swim bait right here, this is the Zman Minnows. I love that swim bait. But essentially, just like the Nedmiki, you're finding individual fish or small groups of fish. You're casting out, watching your bait fall down to the right depth zone, and you want to swim this right above their heads, okay? And usually you're not imparting any special action. You're just trying to find the depth zone that those fish want that at to rise up and attack that bait. So it's more about the speed of the retrieve and how far above their face they want it on any given day. But there's a lot of different swim baits out there that work very well for this technique, and you can use bigger swim baits too. It just depends on the situation. But a lot of times when we're targeting fish offshore that are hanging around those big schools of shad, they want something small and compact like a finesse swim bait like this. And this is also another technique you're going to be using, 6-8 pound test, something in that range with spinning gear, and it's just a very finesse technique. All right, so the next one is a jerkbait. So a jerkbait is really getting a lot of press recently for a lot of guys winning tournaments using forward-facing sonar and using a jerkbait to catch those fish. So a jerkbait, traditionally back in the day, I just thought of a jerkbait as kind of a wintertime pre-spawn a bait, but since forward-facing sonar came out, a lot of people are using this year-round to target individual fish, and so it seems like the perfect situation is anytime those fish are in that like 10-foot or less zone, they could be suspended, in timber or something in over 30 feet of water, but they're in that 10-foot zone, because this jerkbait, depending on the model that you're going to be using, this is the Berkeley Stunna jerkbait. This one tends to go about 4 or 5 feet, something in that range, depending on the line size that you're using. And so you want those fish to be within range to move up and attack this bait. And usually 10 foot or less is the best range. But the cool thing about a jerkbait is, just like all these other techniques, is you can watch those fish react to the jerkbait, and you can change the cadence of your jerkbait while you're fishing based on their body language. You can see how they're responding to it. A lot of times if the fish aren't ready to commit, maybe you don't have the right retrieve or the right mix of pauses and jerks, those fish may follow that bait, follow behind that bait but not commit. But then you figure out that one action or lack thereof that makes those fish commit. And that's the beautiful thing about a jerkbait, is that you can adjust your cadence on the fly based on what you're seeing on the graph. But again, this is a technique that is best suited for clear water and water where the fish are in that 10-foot zone or willing to come up to that 10-foot zone to attack this bait. It's not a deep water tactic. All right, so the final bait that I love using with forward-facing sonar is a jigging spoon. Well, this is actually considered a flutter spoon. So this is more of one that kind of like has a slower, fluttering fall. A jigging spoon is more of a solid lead piece that seems to fall, it does tumble, but it has a more vertical fall and a faster fall. Both of these are going to work well. So, jigging spoons like the Hopkins spoon, or something like the Sexy spoon here. This is a flutter spoon. Both of those are going to work really well. The difference between those different types is the flutter spoon you tend to cast in front of the boat. So if you've got fish that are, say 50 feet out in front of the boat, you got a school of them, you throw a Flutter Spoon over them, and that's a really good way to catch them. But with a jigging spoon, you're generally fishing vertically with that jigging spoon in deeper water. So slightly different situations, but they kind of accomplish a very similar thing. But the Flutter Spoon in general is the bait that I choose when there's a lot of fish around. So like if I'm targeting individual fish, I'll use the Nedmiki or like the Swimbait or the Jerkbait. Okay, but if I'm targeting fish that are grouping up, they're working together to corral shad and to push bait fish up to the surface or around structure, that's when I want to use a spoon, because they are very aggressive, they're very competitive, and they're all, you know, going after those bait fish. And a spoon just really tends to get good bites when they're you know, very competitive like that. So that's when I like to use this. So multiple fish, I would pick up the spoon. If you've got individual fish, you know, it may be a little bit better to throw a small swim bait or a Nedmiki, that sort of thing. But anyways, all these baits are really good for being able to you know, catch fish on forward-facing sonar that you can visually see, video game fishing if you want to call it like that. But these definitely are absolute killers when you're using that type of sonar technology. But anyways, let me know what your thoughts are. Do you use different baits? Is there any baits that you suggest using with forward-facing sonar that really shine with that type of sonar? I want to know what your opinion is in the comments below, and ask any questions that you have also in the comments below. Thank you guys for watching. Make sure you like, share, subscribe. Don't forget, all the links to all the products that I mentioned and the tackle I use with them are in the description below, and you get 10% off of your order with 44tackle.com. I'll see you guys out.